Okay, so we can just maybe start quite sharp.
Yes.
Okay, so welcome everyone. My name is Yvonne Billimore. I'm the Associate Programme Curator at Frame Contemporary Art Finland and co-editor with Jussi Koitela of Rehearsing Hospitalities Companion 2. To start with, I'm just going to do some basic introductions and some housekeeping. So this is the first in a series of online events being held between September and October 2020 to celebrate the launch of Rehearsing Hospitalities Companion 2. This is the second in a series of readers published by Frame Contemporary Art Finland and Archive Books, which accompany Frame's 5-year public programme, Rehearsing Hospitalities. In this launch event this evening, we are going to host some words and responses and readings from Frame's director, Raija, Koli, the editors, myself, Yvonne, and Jussi Koitela, and the publisher, Chiara Figone, from Archive Books. Also, artist Camille Auer, one of the publication contributors. Okay, so just a little word on the format for this evening. This is going to be posted, I think it's posted in the event description here, and also in the transcript. So first we'll have the words from Raija. Second, Jussi and myself will introduce the publication. Then we're going to have a 5-minute break. And then Chiara from Archive Books will join us. About 8 o'clock, we'll have another 5-minute break. And then about 8:05, Camille Auer will join us through a video reading. And then there'll be some time for some responses and questions before we round up the event around 8:30 or so. Okay. And just some technicalities. This event is being recorded this evening, as with the other events. An artist, Iona Rawson, is captioning. We welcome comments and questions, which we can collate throughout and address at the end. The way that you can comment in the YouTube is to use the YouTube sidebar. I think unfortunately you have to create a channel for yourself, but it's very simple. And we also have Ida behind the scenes helping us this evening, so she can respond to any difficulties in your, if you're having trouble, she can respond in the comments section. And just to also note that Frame is introducing the use of guidelines for safer and more inclusive participation to all of our events. These have been shared with all the speakers for this event and are posted into the comments, not into the comments, into the description on YouTube. And they're also available in the transcript, and these are for audience viewing. Okay, so some technicalities around the event, but we wanted to let you know about how to access the copies of the Rehearsing Hospitalities Companion 2. These are available as open access PDFs and in hard copy. And in addition, we'll also be releasing an ebook and an audiobook version later in the autumn. So hard copies and open access PDFs can be purchased from Archive Books website, www.archivebooks.org. This should also be linked into the description on the YouTube event. addition, Frame is distributing a limited number of hard copies for free from our office space in Helsinki. These can be collected on Thursday, 24th September, so in 2 days' time, and Thursday, 1st October, from 10 AM to 3 PM. Full information on how to access the building is available on our website at frame-finland.fi, and it's on the Rehearsing Hospitalities page. Again, a link is in the description below. Okay, and yes, we will also reserve some copies to share with guests during our next Rehearsing Hospitalities gathering in spring 2020. Okay, so that's the practicalities over. Over to you, Jussi.
Yes, welcome also from my behalf. So inspired by Camille Auer's text in the publication, ending, beginning, rather than ending with the thanks, we would like to begin with the thanking all of those involved in the process of making this edition of the companion series. To all our contributors, companions, Camille Auer, Annette Decker, Dennis Ferreira da Silva, Amy Hamrae, Hanna Helander, and Arla Makka for Sami translation, Ali Akbar Mehta, Astrida Naimansis, Marietta Radomska, Marianna Savallampi, Laura Soisalo-Soininen, Minna Tarkka, and Touko Vahtera, and to our copy editors and proofreaders, Josh Allen, Laura Boxberry, and Petrola Grönroos. Last but not least, to designer Lilia Di Bella and publisher Chiara Figone at Archive Books for their valued collaboration. And now we would have a short opening words from Raija, director of the Frame Contemporary Art Finland.
Good evening. My name is Raija Koli and I'm the director of Frame Contemporary Art Finland. I'm very happy and very proud to be opening this event tonight, the launch of Rehearsing Hospitalities Companion #2. I'm a strong advocate for encounters. I believe in people meeting people and in the sharing of ideas, and that is of course also the remit of Frame. A huge part of our work is setting up meetings between art professionals in Finland and those from other parts of the world. Now we find ourselves in a time when those physical meetings are not possible. And so the second part of the publication series for Frame's Rehearsing Hospitalities program, the Rehearsing Hospitalities Companion #2, and this series of events are reimagined as platforms where those encounters and discussions take place. I also want to thank everyone involved, all of you who are tuning in on this discussion tonight and through YouTube later. A big thank you to all the contributors of the publication, and especially to Camille Auer, who tonight is present through her video work. Thank you very much to Yvonne Billimore and Jussi Koitela from Frame, who have co-created the whole Rehearsing Hospitalities program and will be co-hosting tonight. Special thanks also to our publisher Archive Books and Chiara Figone. I hope you all enjoy this program tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Raija. And now we will first give a little bit context for the Frames program and this publication, and then introduce a little bit contributions in the publication. And then we have a discussion with Chiara Figone from Archive Books, more about the collaboration and the series of the publications. But Frame's Rehearsing Hospitalities program started 2019 and it's planned to be going on until 2023. And Frame is an organization that as Raija was mentioning too, is hosting and facilitating, creating networks, international connections by inviting curators and supporting travel and research. Hospitality as a practice is the core of these processes that are considered many times managerial acts, or keeping keeping the practicalities of traveling or researching, meeting going on. But I think we were looking into that hospitality can be much more. It can be, or the politics of hospitality can be much more within the context of art organization. From the individual level and part of the individual and collaborational level to nation state, what is there to look into? And this program is starting, attempting and producing new ways of understanding hospitality in this relationships within the nation state and beyond. And we are aiming to work in more hospitable ways, and this is a platform for rehearsing this kind of hospitalities with our partners and collaborators in Finland and abroad. First of the year, so the program started in 2019. And it has a certain different focus points in every year. And we have last year we began by looking into different ways of knowing and different communities' knowledge. And we were looking at how to look, inquire, and address these knowledges through artistic practice and research, such as different ways of embodying knowledge, or as maybe some examples, healing, spirituality, and many others. We were trying to bring together artists and curators working with feminist, decolonial, and post-human critique of science and knowing. But we realized from the beginning, in a way, that it's not enough to speak about or practice multiple ways of knowing if we don't look into who can really access on these ways of knowledges, and what kind of communities we can access on certain ways of knowing. So with this publication and the program also during this year, we wanted to look beyond normative and institutionalized understandings of access. How can arts organization and institution treat access not as a general or universal policy, but instead understand access need as coming from plural and decentralized ways of knowing and experiencing the world? And the publication looks into, for example, I just slow a bit. Normative and ableist cultural structures which restrict access for all. Access to institutions which generate knowledge. Access to marginal or non-hegemonic forms of culture and knowledge. Access to localized, traditional situated knowledges. Access to digital technologies and support for learning. Accessibility in accessibility of language, translations, and modes of communication. Access to care, access across and between different disciplines. Ways of sharing knowledge from community to community, human to more than human, body to matter. So I'll just give it now to Yvonne.
Unmute. I was pouring my water and I didn't want it to distract. Yeah, thanks, Jussi. Yeah, it's good to hear about the different ways that access has been approached in the publication. And also, as Raija mentioned earlier on, and yourself slightly touched upon, this edition functions a little bit differently from the previous one, which directly accompanied the Rehearsing Hospitalities gathering in 2019. So in times when gathering in person have been restricted and even policed, this publication has become a site for hosting and gathering around issues of access, and in times weighed by multiple crises. It basically invited a wide range of guests to contribute to returning, rethinking, recontextualizing, and rehearsing our relationships with hospitality and access. So to give some attention to these different contributors, I wanted to read you a sort of reformatted or refigured section of the introduction. Just a short paragraph on each of the contributors that's sort of been edited down from this longer introduction. But this is a nice way perhaps to get a little bit of an insight into all these various approaches to access that are being explored in the publication. Okay. Camille Auer begins at the end with her text, end, ending, beginning, beginning. She insists you read to a rhythm. Moving along her lines, you must read them and reread them, return them, as she takes you along a path of repetition and distortion. This path needs to be trodden time and time again, to each time gain further meaning and guide new forms of thinking. This is a poetic work that reflects Camille's voice performances and resists binary and hegemonic forms of narrative, language, and punctuation. We strongly urge you to read it aloud and listen to the vocal reverberations. Annette Decker's contribution, Archival Absurdity or a Walk in the Park, takes us on a journey from Annette's childhood garden with sweet berry bushes to her new allotment garden, and further onwards to think with a speculative project based in Helsinki's Central Park. This project, Allotment Archives, invites us to consider different approaches for commons archiving. As a collection of anecdotes, speculative and lived, Annette and her characters rehearse stories for cultivating collective and accessible knowledges without hierarchy and beyond the regime of the expert. Laura Sassalon-Sossinen invites us to enter her solitary process of inquiry. Walking in the Lake is a visual essay constructed from a sequence of images which follow Laura's passage through the city of Helsinki. The images document a series of articulations during the process of her artistic commission at Frame Contemporary Art Finland's office space, commissioned in the context of Rehearsing Hospitalities 2020. Her work can be read as an idiosyncratic mapping of the city, where traces and reconfigurations of sites are situated alongside intimate personal memories. Laura is searching for ways to know the world through her own body. In her text, If Hospitality, then the duty is to repair and to foster, Denise Ferreira da Silva speaks to the importance of acknowledging difference and the disparities existing in who is afforded access to shelter and hospitality. Against the backdrop of a myriad of interconnecting global issues, Denise calls for the reconsideration of the politics and philosophies of access and hospitality. Quote, "This time around, the call to hospitality is not about offering shelter, but about making the planet a more hospitable place for whom modern thinking has prescribed death." End quote. Distance education as access to one's own language and roots, education in Sami throughout Finland, by contributor Hannah Helander, traces the unfoldings of the pilot project Distance Education in Sami Languages, initiated in 2018. Through embracing digital technologies and distance learning, can Sami languages and therefore Sami culture be revitalized for a younger generation? Question mark. The essay is translated into Northern Sami by Hannah's colleague on the project, Arla Maga. Amy Hamry's essay, From Exceptional Accommodations to Disability Justice Design, Ways of Thinking About Accessibility as Hospitality, draws out the long and problematic histories present in current accommodationalist approaches to access and how they have informed certain ways of knowing disabilities towards new progressive forms of access knowledge that are emerging from within the disability justice movement. Marianne Savalampi and Taupo Vatera's contribution appears in Finnish alongside an English translation. Through the course of their in-conversation titled Cultural Power Relations and Anti-Hierarchical Possibilities in the Epidemic Era, they unpack deep-seated forms of ableism and normativity prominent in mainstream cultures. In this correspondence, they share their experiences of witnessing the coronavirus epidemic in Finland unfold and quote, a criticism towards a culture that values able-bodiedness, end quote, which became common discourse. With our invitation to turn over hospitality within these times, Marietta Randomska's response combines her own research within the emerging field of queer death studies with a detailed reading of the coronavirus disease pandemic. In her essay, Viral Queerings, Amplified Vulnerabilities, Marietta seeks to subvert normative and simplified understandings of our present. In Queering the Pandemic, she asks us to, quote, reimagine the ways we relate to human and non-human others, perhaps in a more hospitable register, end quote. And finally, Astrida Nemanis's essay, The Body is the Site for Climate Catastrophe, can almost be read as an epilogue. It is a humbling reminder that these times are not just haunted by COVID-19, but a myriad of human and more than human crises. She asks us to access our internal registers, our sensory, lived and embodied knowledge, as a way to read and know the changes of the world through our bodies, in order to imagine a, quote, different kind of aesthetics and politics, end quote.
Thank you, Yvonne. In addition to these invited contributors, there are a series of short host notations to encounter. These are thoughts and reflections on hospitality, knowledge, and access composed by ourselves and the editors and our Rehearsing Hospitalities partners and co-hosts, Minna Tarkka from Digital Culture and Collaborative Art Agency MCULT, and Ali Akbar Mehta and Marianne Savalampi from anti-racist and queer feminist project Museum of Impossible Forms. Rather than acting as commentaries or definitions, these notations articulate the importance of our different readings, experiences, and knowledge we bring to this year's Rehearsing Hospitalities program. The publication is further populated with a collection of contextual references which have been informing Rehearsing Hospitalities. These references inform an expanded Rehearsing Hospitalities 2020 reading list, which is located at the back of the book. Rather than to confuse readers, we hope this complex entanglement of contributors, notes, references can provide multiple points of entry. Readers can choose to read the cover to cover, back to front, or short sections at the time. And here is, we have a little bit time, so I can read it. We have a example of one of these host notations, and it's actually written by me, so I can read it now. The Rehearsing Hospitalities Program 2020 draws many of its ideas from current discourses and practices of disability studies, crypt theory, and feminist thinking. In various ways, these discourses can be used to challenge the tendency towards universalism and representationalism in art and cultural production, as well as knowing in general. The production of and experiencing of art and knowledge, and the knowledge production and mediation that comes with it, happens from within our own situated and relational, cultural, and social political positions. This means that the boundaries and barriers, as well as privileges for accessing knowledge, artistic expression, or life itself, are situated and relational too. Researcher in disability studies and feminist theory Rosemary Garland Thompson states, quote starts, knowledge emerges in form of different body minds moving through environments together, navigating barriers and finding pathways, both materially and metaphorically, end of quote. Garland Thompson helps us to see that knowledge emerges in specific conditions that are different from each subject depending on their body minds and social, cultural, and economical backgrounds. Knowledge is not something that can be accessed only through removal of barriers or obstacles. It emerges from situated experiences and through the entanglement with these obstacles. It might be useful to expand Thompson's statement toward access itself, whereby different accesses and access knowledges emerge from moving through and navigating different barriers and pathways. This engagement is not simply an act of peaceful navigation, but also political, social, material, and physical struggle, where different body minds demand equality, justice, and right to live. How can arts organizations and institutions treat access as not as a general or universal policy, but instead of understand access need as coming from the plural and decentralized ways of knowing and experiencing the world. So now we will have a short break, about 9 minutes actually. So we will continue at 7:40. Thank you. Hello. Okay. Let's wait for Yvonne still. Good. We are here.
Sorry,
so
I'm having some issues with the on-off mute video thing.
it's normal. So we are continuing the events. Thanks for coming back with us. So this part of the event will focus on a short conversation and presentation with Chiara Figone, publisher of the
With the on-off mute video thing.
Okay, good.
More technical issues, sorry.
A little bit echoing. So this part will focus on the conversation, or is a conversation with Chiara Figone, publisher of archive books. Chiara is an editor, educator, and agitator, and founder of Archive Book, a publishing endeavor nurtured by a community of practitioners collaborating across regions and social, political environments. At the core of the Archive Book Archive's work lies in commitment to disturb Eurocentric epistemologies. As a result, archive works is deeply rooted in sustained scrutiny of the role of the language's visuality and archives in perpetration of the colonial knowledge. The impulse to publish stems from the desire to disseminate stories for subversive potential they can yield, creating cracks in dominant narratives, fleeing accounts of history with a capital H, and turning to the power of the fragment. Archive is committed to an expanded idea of art publishing encompassing different voices and formats. Thanks for being here with us, Chiara. Welcome. So we were wanting to hear from you first. Your idea was on publishing a little bit, and also this long-term collaboration and series. How do you see as in the at the archive books this our collaboration and the Rehearsing Hospitalities publication series?
Thank you very much for having me. I'm very happy to share a few thoughts around our practice and our work together. So I would say that there are many ways of inhabiting the space of publishing, and there are many ways of perpetuating publishing. So now speaking from archive practice, we center our work very much around the idea that each publication and each series is the possibility for us to create a new set of relationships. So a new set of relationships that arise in the process of producing a publication, and in these collective processes that each publication triggers in a way. So I would kind of center already our own practice in this interest, in this phase of making of the book, where the funding and the creation of relationship is extremely important. So of course we are concerned with the act of making public as much as the act of creating a public for the publications that we circulate. But I would say we really center very much our attention around that ecosystem that is created around the publication, and really dwelling in the space of research and the space of inquire that each publication open. And in this sense, our collaboration on Rehearsing Hospitalities really resemble a lot with our publishing program at large, where we are very interested in long frames so that one can really articulate and think through processes and through contents in a certain way. And so we think that the space of a series like the one that has been established by you, the editors, and in dialogue with us, it's in a way the opening up of a space of learning and of study. And it's almost the creation of a public space in a sense, and which really resonate also with how this Companion 2 has been imagined as a space of gathering itself. And I think that we imagine this, always often refer to this idea of each publication opening up a new site for learning, which is also a site for conflict, a site for difference of opinion. It's not just a pacified space for dialogue, but it can become an interesting space where certain conflicts are also analyzed and discussed and arise in the process of making of a publication. So I think that the idea of hospitality is very central also in the practice of publishing, under different aspects, from linguistic hospitality to many idea of how certain culture circulate via the book, and how the contents and the knowledge that each book contains travels usually far and wide, and how then one could imagine that the contents that are uncovered and reassembled and edited in a book are not complete, that the creation of the meaning also happens in the dialogue with the reader that might be receiving the publication in a different cultural setting, in a different environment, in a different space. So I think that this space of a series is very interesting for us at Archive, and we try to think with it. And it was really a wonderful process to think with you. We also share many authors, many references. We think with many people, and I think that it's also what interests us, is really to work on the opening up of these spaces of dialogue and inquire.
Thanks a lot. I have one question to ask, and maybe Yvonne can also then comment a little bit afterwards. Because also in the description of archive books, there's a community of practitioners and communities, like a publishing community, very much emphasized. And also when you were speaking about, it's always about kind of collaboration, thinking with different partners, different authors, different references. So I'm also interested a little bit, like, how do you see, because in our publication, there's now this time of a COVID and Corona epidemic somehow affecting how the publication has been made, and also for the contributors. So I'm also interested, how do you see this time kind of affecting on the process of publishing and process of publishing with community?
It's a very good question that I think we will respond over time. I think that we are not yet aware of the consequences of what we are experiencing, and this probably goes also for other realms of life. But in publishing and in our experience as a sort of autonomous, self-organized publisher, this moment has served as a possibility to exit a certain mode of production that sometimes pushes us also to produce and produce and produce, even though we try to resist that, but it is at the same time, you know, pushing back our resisting. So I think that we had this opportunity to be also quite self-reflective and really looking at all the shortcomings of an endeavor like ours, and also all the potentiality in a way that lies within the work of an entity that can play with different formats, different outcomes, and it doesn't have restriction in that sense, if not financial. And I think that what is very important for us at Archive, which also keeps us always alert, is that we are working across different regions. So within Archive, there is a necessity to be very critical towards whatever we do. And this is really happening through this community of people that are, I would say, the core group, but then also a lot of artists and authors that over time, and sister organizations that over time, as you know, have helped us in seeing our own blind spots, our own biases. So I think that that's why we really refer to our work as a work of a community, which I know that is a word that is very difficult to use because it's kind of abused sometimes. I mean, it goes together with solidarity and other words that have been overused. But in our case, I think it's very important because the authors and the organizations and that have been working and thinking with us have been very instrumental in shaping our own understanding of what publishing can be and can do, and having within the group different perspectives. It's really helpful because we at least make each conversation a critical one where we can really pay attention, you know, and still we have a lot to learn, we have a lot to experience, especially when it comes to the subject of Companion 2. It's really for publishers with our constitution is not so easy to think about accessibility enough. I mean, it's not a justification, but it's just to say that it's an in progress space where we try really also to think about accessibility in a different way, and how to negotiate it with our own precarious structure in a way.
Maybe I could just respond a little bit and say that, of course, this has been the case for us as well, that the collaboration, not just with yourself, but with all of the contributors of this series, of the previous series, of the whole programme, is really beyond important to us. This is very much a learning journey for ourselves around all of these issues, but in publishing as well. And I think it's, you spoke of the publications as being sites for learning and also for conflict. And I think this has been very much within our thinking and the way that we've been approaching it, how we can, much like hospitality, like kind of complicate these relations and not present them as simplified guest host relations, but sort of apparent in many different forms of power structures and in many different kinds of ways. And also this like this kind of a possibility for it to explore how this can happen in dialogue with the readers. This is something we're trying to, like, I guess, like by accompanying a public program or having these events, like how can we open up these texts and publishing into different forms and explore different forms of gathering. And also just like was thinking about the this kind of issue of temporality, which seems to have become more visible to some in this time, or kind of taken on a new meaning, and how this is very much embedded into this year's publication, is this idea of how can we not start something anew, but start kind of returning things, revisiting them, and staying with them as they are making new meaning time and time again. And to do that with our collaborators and with you, to build up a programme and a series of publications that don't just jump and treat things as thematic, but kind of become critical reflections on themselves. So where the first year's programme really explored thinking about knowledge and different ways of knowing, and how that we could be more hospitable to that. It sort of didn't really include these issues of access. And so this is where, as Jussi spoke, the kind of, in the second series, we can reflect on that and also think about a kind of self-criticism within that. So, yeah.
But that's how, in a way, one builds a practice, right? Is also through the lack of certain aspects being analyzed within a certain moment, and how you feel that you need to go and do that, you know? So I feel like that's the beauty of a series, the relationship and the tension between different volumes, is that kind of forces you to activate that space between the volumes, and to think critically about your own shortcomings in a way, when you have been working on one volume, and then also giving you the possibility to think in perspective to the next volume. Of course, we know that we are speaking from a very specific place. I mean, we are speaking from different places, but in a way, we are still in the center of a certain construct that is Europe. So it's important, and we are, of course, keeping that in mind. But then it's also true that the books are, in a way, you know, mobility is at the core of a publication, because the publication is made to make content circulate. So in a way, it's also interesting to think about those encounters when the publication leaves your frame and your way of editing and your references, your set of references, and maybe lands in another space where it will be taken and understood and studied with other set of ideas also in mind. So that's why I think it's always interesting that these contents can, you know, circulate and be disseminated, but really the meaning is created once the reader is encountering the contents that goes not for our publication, but I guess for all the publications. But I think that when you have activated that space of resonance between different volumes, then you are also most likely to receive back inputs and maybe have, you know, voices that can enter the discussion, because that space is still open. Once a book in itself is circulating, of course, there are possibilities of dialogue, but there, I think, in comparison to a series, there are always reduced a little bit. Then, of course, one could say that the publishing program of a publishing house is, in that sense, the same thing. You know, it's not about publishing books, it's about publishing author, and it's about creating a space in which this author can also read, you know, each other contents and disagree or agree or see different aspects. And possibly, if a publisher creates that type of space, learning from its own trajectory, a publishing space become a space of learning and a site of learning, hopefully, co-learning, I would say, actually. Yeah. Sorry, I talked too much.
No, it was perfect. Thank you a lot. I was just, maybe very last comment, maybe what came to my mind when Chiara, you were speaking about this kind of space which opens between, it's also maybe something, if we come back to this question of access, that maybe it gives a certain different kind of access for the readers and contributors and different partners to enter into the space of knowledge production when you know, or when we know that there is a horizon where to look for, that we know that it kind of continues not only one publication or one event. And maybe this is what Yvonne also mentioned earlier, on not to focus on thematic kind of structures, but somehow continuing things and piling up references and different knowledges.
Yes, no, exactly. And sometimes I feel like also the field of art, and especially from the institutions, which this is definitely an exception, but it's more interested in going from one focus thematic to another, and actually that space of interaction between two moments is nullified, and it's almost, sometimes I think it's almost a strategy, you know, to keep people from having that type of space of thinking and going more in depth, digging deeper in the research, because you are somehow constantly shifting with this sort of event economy and the new topic and the new subject, right? So I think that these are already, I mean, the question of hospitality is like the one of solidarity, are infrastructural questions. So they come with the fact that they don't really regard one thematic focus, but actually they have implications in infrastructures. So I think that having that type of approach that allows us to really think and rethink and be critical of what we did and then correct, analyze, it's really important, and it's very rare in our field. Oftentimes we are pushed to do differently, you know. So there are a lot of organizations in the arts doing this. So I'm not saying that this is the unique example, but I say that this should be more of a practice because it really allows organizations to exist in longer, you know, researches and inquiries.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Thank you. Thank you, Chiara. I think time is running and we need to kind of start stepping towards the next section of the event. Thanks a lot. But before that, it's gonna be Camille Auer's contribution. But before that, we're gonna have a 5-minute break. So please come back in 8 past 8 in Helsinki time. Yeah, thank you.
Bye.
Yeah, bye.
Bye.
Okay, are we back? Okay. Sorry, I'm wondering, you see I can only see Chiara's screen. I'll just continue. Yeah, I think this is it fixed. Okay. Okay. Thanks again, Chiara, that was great. And I think it leads us on to this next reading by Camille Auer. Yeah, I think it kind of fits very well with some approaches that she's exploring in her work, particularly around the kind of disruption of this dominant narrative and the ways in which we explore language and performativity and production. And so it is also with the great delight that in this launch we can share Camille Auer's video reading of her text, End, Ending, Beginning, Beginning. This is a poetic work initially presented for this publication. Camille Auer has transformed this text into a performative reading and video work, especially for this launch. Unfortunately, she is not able to join us live today, but I will be able to read an introductory text that she's kindly written for us. Okay, so this is in Camille's words. Dear all, I'm sorry for not being present online in real time, as was my intention. I am present in this recording of me reading my text, End, Ending, Beginning, Beginning. I am present in the form of this introductory text that Yvonne is reading now. I'm happy to be here. I'm happy to share this online space with all of you. Thank you for being here. Thank you for having me. Thank you, Iona Rossin, for captioning my video. Nice to virtually, sort of, meet you, Chiara. I hope we can meet in a more traditional sense on another occasion. I've been sucked into a wave of repercussion from criticising the Finnish National Theatre for implicit transphobia. This has taken most of my energy for the past couple of weeks. It doesn't have a direct link to this event or my text, but there is a resonance. I have this very simple idea. I don't know the exact genealogy of where it came from, but I've had it for a while. Some of it can be traced back to Trinh T. Minhas and Gloria Anzaldúa. I think the structure of Aristotelian drama, that is the core assumption of all storytelling in the so-called West, is locking our worldview into a normative setting. To open up those norms, the whole structure of how we communicate ideas must be revised. I suggest radical poetics might be a tool for this. The form of this text is directly influenced by the writing of Gertrude Stein, who wasn't necessarily very radical in her politics, but undeniably so in her poetics. While the National Theatre case has been about the casting of cis men as trans women characters, I am also questioning the whole worldview drama theatre is based on. And at the same time, of course, I'm not opposed to dramatic texts existing. They can exist, but I will slide under them in the water and poke their bellies. It's okay, just metaphorically. I won't poke anyone's actual bellies unless it's mutually agreed upon. Sincerely, Camille. And Jussi, I believe you're going to share the screen and we can watch the video reading.
And ending, beginning, beginning. This is the end. This is the end. This is the end. Is this the end? Is this the end? The end. The end is this. This is the end of what is considered the considered end. The considered end. This is considered the beginning, and in the case we were to consider this the end, this is the end in consideration of considering beginning. The end of considering. This the end ending here. This ends here. Ends considering ends consider. Ends ending consider ends beginning in relation to turns of events. In relation to peaks. In relation to who has evolved and who is the main character. Who is the main character is the protagonist. Is the special individual, is the exception to the norm. Is the norm. Is the norm, is the norm. Normative exception to the norm. Middle. Exception to the exception. Special individual. Succession of events unfolding. Unfolding events in succession. Norm unfolding. Hero is heroic, heroically, exceptionally accepting the norm by seemingly transgressing the norm. Is who is doing that, who is doing what is doing. Theory, 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 theoretical, theory, theoretically, in theory. Dramatics, dramaturgically, drama. Middle. Poetically, poetics, poetry. Narratively narrating, prosaically prose. Non-fiction, non-fictional, theoretically dramatic. This is the end in the sense that the end happens here. In this sense, here is the end. Super middle. The end begins, and the beginning of the end ends. And the end gets further in its progression. The middle of the end is rarely discussed. The middle of the end is overlooked. The end of the end is just the end. Even though it's also the end of the end. The end is the culmination of dramaturgy. This is the end. The end is this. This is ending the beginning of the middle. The beginning of the middle is rarely discussed. The beginning of the middle is overlooked. The succession of events unfold. The norm unfolds. The norm unfolds in the succession of the events. The norm embodied in the figure of the protagonist. The protagonist unfolds in the succession of events unfolding through the norm. The norm unfolds as the structure. The structure clicks, we click into place. This is how things unfold. This comes now then comes is, then comes how, then comes things, then comes unfold, and unfolding takes place, and that is the structure, and this is the direction of progress, is the direction of success, and no one wants to go backwards. Even though there is a contradiction, because it's conservative now to want to sustain the structure of progress, and progressive to want to dismantle it, but no one wants to go backwards. And here is the end. This is the end. Ending the middle of the middle is rarely discussed. The middle of the middle is overlooked. And here is the end. This is the end ending. The middle of the middle is rarely discussed. The middle of the middle is overlooked. Darkness is a darkness, is a darkness, is a little bit of light coming in. Under no circumstances, under no circumstances should we, under no circumstances should we, under no circumstances, the death of the death of the death of the. How are we to see? How are we? How are we to see how? How are we? How are we to see how is beginning, beginning, middle, beginning, 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 middle, beginning, middle, peak, zenith, crescent, ascent, crescent, the death of present. Narration narrates the death of present. Narration narrates anthropocentric individuation. Narration narrates Eurocentric subjectivity. Narration narrates a centrifuge of who matters. The past, the present, the future, the beginning, the middle, the end, the present, the future, the past, the beginning, the middle, the thing that comes after the thing, that comes before the thing, that comes before the thing, that comes after the separates the thing we are from the thing we were, from the thing we become, from the thing we were, from the thing we aren't, from the this, from that, from self, from other, object, from subject, losers from winners, oppressors from oppressed, oppressed from oppressors, violence, out of sight, within the language, below the radar. How much is violence? How much is violence a product of narration, of narrative structures? Beginning, beginning. Where is the beginning? When will we get there? Every moment is the end of history and the beginning of the future. Every moment is the end of future and the beginning of history. It used to be the next minute, then it became this minute, second, millisecond, nanosecond, picosecond, then it became the previous one, and so on. That's where it comes in, and boom, it was that coming in, and now it's in, and that's how it happened. Every time comes across, every time. Quote, the door is open as well as closed. The door is open as well as closed. End quote. Gertrude Stein, How to Write, 1931. The beginning, beginnings beginning, the beginning of a life, of a death, of a life, of an end, of a middle, of a beginning, of an end, of a beginning, of an end, of a beginning, of a middle, of a death, of a birth, of a path, of a life, of a human-sized understanding of linearity. Birth, life, death. Life, death, birth. Death, birth, life. Life, birth, death. Death, life, birth. Birth, death, life. End. But death is continuous, and becoming is a continuous birth, and life is a becoming of death and linearity. In dramatic structure is the basis of an anthropocentric understanding of existence, of existing, understanding existing as a verb, as an act, as a becoming, as the middle, as the beef in the burger. But a middle is not a verb, a middle is a zenith, a moment where becoming has become, ends becoming, and begins to come undone. A middle is nothing, a middle is a void, a middle does not exist, and we are always there, in the middle.
Thank you, Camille, for producing that incredible reading of your work. It's really amazing to have the opportunity to listen to you read aloud your words and bring them to life. So I think, you see, we're just going to round up the event, actually. I'm not sure we have any comments to respond to. So, yeah, we can just round up. And in doing that, we just want to maybe plug the next events in this series. On Thursday, 24th September at 7 p.m. Eastern European Summertime, we've got readings by Annette Decker and Central Park Archives artists Susanna Annas and Ali Akbar Mehta. On Friday, 2nd of October at 7 p.m, again, European, oh my goodness, I'm over it, EST time. We have readings with Amy Hammery and Marianne Savalampi and Tauko Vatera. And on Thursday, 8th of October at 7 p.m, we've got readings with Denise Ferreira de Silva and Estrida Nemanis. Just to note that this event, or the last event, is not going to be live but recorded due to the time differences of the different contributors. And so once again, just a little reminder on where to get copies of the publication. These are available open access and as hard copies from Archive Books. Their website is www.archivebooks.org, and this is in the event description below, a link to that. PDFs can also actually be found on the Frame website, which again, there is a link in the description too. And if you're in Helsinki, Frame are gifting a limited number of free hard copies from the Frame office on Thursday 24th of September and Thursday 1st of October from 10 AM to 3 PM. Full information on how to access the building is available on our website, and the link is in the event description. Okay. So just finally, thank you all for joining us, to Raija and Chiara, to Camille, to Jussi, to Iona for captioning, and Ida for doing all this invisible background work and hosting. Thanks, of course, to everyone following the stream on YouTube, and hopefully we'll see you on Thursday for the next event in the series. And we'll practice our technical skills for then. Okay, thank you very much, everybody. Good night.
Yeah, thank you from my behalf too. See you in next Thursday and next 2 weeks. Bye.
Cheers, bye.